Okay, here's an endgame where white has a bishop against black's 2 pawns, and obviously white has to stop those 2 pawns at all costs, because there's no way for white to win. The only chance is to draw, and it's white to move here. The first move is to simply move the bishop over here, like this, and then the king goes here, and then the bishop goes here, and then just takes. And this is very important, because if you go here you lose, so you go down here, over here, and then it's a draw. And the following example we have similar, where black has a bishop against white's 2 pawns, opposite role, so to speak. So there's no difference here. We can simply say that white has to obviously stop black from taking any of these pawns. So the first move is simply to play a5, and the second move is to push the pawn, and then bring the king, and then push the other pawn, and the other, like that. And that's the end. Let's take a quick look at it one more time. a5, another push, bring the king closer, and push this pawn, and one more time. And here is another position. We can see again black has 2 pawns against white's but bishop, and of course white has to draw. And it's very simple. This, you simply attack the pawns with the bishop like this, and then when one of the pawns move, you put the bishop in between, bring the king closer like this, and then you simply sacrifice the bishop, and that's the end of the exercise. One more time. Bishop attacks, put the bishop in between the pawns so black can't move, bring the king closer, sacrifice, and that's the end. Then of course after black takes, you simply take this pawn, and if it doesn't take, well, then you simply sacrifice the bishop whenever the pawn moves. It's as simple as that. Okay, here's another example where we have a bishop against 2 pawns, and it's white to move, and the first thing you have to do is to check, like this. Check, and when the king moves, so you put the bishop on a1, and then you bring your own king closer, like this. And here's obviously an important moment. You simply take, you give up this bishop over here, like this, and when it, okay, with check, black didn't take, but then when you go up here, it's obviously completely drawn, because if black takes the bishop, you simply take the pawn, and there's just no way for black to do anything. I mean, for example, king a3, then the bishop is already attacking the square, so it's completely drawn. And again, you have a bishop against 2 pawns, and it's white to move. And obviously, the first thing you have to do is to bring the king closer. That's always, I mean, basically, it's always the same thing. You bring the king closer, and when the pawn starts marching too far, you stop them with the bishop. So the first move here is to bring the king closer to the pawns, and then when this pawn is just one move from promoting, you just simply stop like this, and here you give up the bishop like this, take the pawn, and the black king can't get there back in time, and then after king f1 it's draw, because I mean, if black tries to protect the pawn, it will be stalemate, and obviously the only way to protect the pawn is to play king f3. That would be stalemate. And in this example, white has to use his king more than the bishop, and you will see that right now. Like that. And the point with the last move was that if black takes back with the pawn here, obviously it will be stalemate, because the only way to protect after pawn takes, well, okay, that would be actually stalemate right away. So black can't even take back, and after e2 check, king to e1 is just completely drawn anyway. So let's take a look one more time. King g2, king f3, and then king d1, and then the sacrifice. Okay, this one is a little bit different, because this could be what I was talking about before. You have one bishop against two passers like this, and the bishop could easily become overloaded. But it's white to move, and again, the king has to be active. So you bring the king closer to one of these pawns. But of course, in this example, as we will see, it's a little bit different. So you bring the king closer like this, and then you bring the bishop closer. And right now we can see that the only move to stop the pawn is to check. And then king g3, that's the only way. I mean, for example, if b1, you simply take the pawn and then you come back with the bishop, so that this is the only way. And now just checkmate. Well, it's not actually checkmate, but I mean, of the queen g1, you simply take, and then king g1, and we bring the bishop back, and then you take the pawn. Of course, it's not checkmate, so let's take a look at one more time. We bring the king closer like this, and check, check, and that's it. And here, this is also an example where we have to give up the bishop. Bishop h3, king g1, bishop g2, pawn promotes. You take the pawn, and then you allow this pawn to come all the way to f2, and well, the black king will be stuck on h2, as we will see. Of course, this okay, let's just take a look. Like this, you give up the bishop, and then you take the pawn one more time. Bishop h3, g2, and then you give it up. That's it. At first glance, when you see a position like this, it looks like, and also the previous ones, it looks like there's no way for white to actually stop both pawns. But the problem is that these pawns are too far up the board, especially this one, of course. And again, you bring the king close to the action, and like this. Now you have to stop this pawn with bishop g7, and then you bring the king closer again, and then bring in order to stop, because obviously the king can't cross this diagonal, because if king to d4 or something, then just pawn promotes over here. So you bring it back, and when the king moves, you simply take this pawn over here. So the king and the bishop obviously have to work together. So one more time. Okay. Okay, you move the king. Okay, one last. Again, you have two passers, but the pawns are too far off the board, and so you simply bring it in closer like this, here, and then you sacrifice the bishop in the last move like this. And again, black can't take either with the pawn or with the king, because if the pawn takes, it's stalemate, and also they can't take with the king, so the only move would be d2 check. But then of the king to d1, it's draw. So let's take one more look. Oops. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video about bishop versus two pawns, and I'll see you soon.